What is up, Earth's mightiest subscribers? It's Blerd without fear. Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Astonishing Iceman #1 by Steve Orlando and Vincenzo Carratù. This issue is really heartbreaking and at the same time very uplifting as well. By and large, I've never been the hugest fan of any of Iceman's solo series. I mean, it's not that they're bad, it's just that they're not anything where I'm just like, oh my god, I have to read this like right now. It's never been anything quite on that level, but I feel like Steve Orlando is turning all of that around with this issue. Now, if you're asking yourself, wait a minute, did we not just see Iceman get melted in X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023? Yes, you would be correct. So why is Iceman back right now? Because as we know, the 5 are off the table. So mutant resurrection is donezo, at least for the foreseeable future. So no mutant is going to be able to die right now and be brought back. This is something that I feel a lot of people are not focusing on. So with Iceman being back and a lot of people thinking, oh, well, he was just resurrected by the 5. Of course, that is not the case. He was not resurrected by any of the mutants on Krakoa, not even any of the ones who are still around, who are even considered to be capable of such a thing. He was resurrected by a very unlikely character. Now, I know a lot of people were wondering why the hell is the Inhuman Romeo hanging around right now? That was the big question I felt a lot of people were asking themselves during the Hellfire Gala. For those unfamiliar with the character of Romeo, he is an Inhuman who Iceman had a fleeting romantic encounter with during Sina Grace and Alessandro Vitti's Iceman Volume 3. That was back in 2017, and we don't really see Romeo hanging around a whole lot. He's not a character who shows up in a lot of comics, even when the Inhumans are involved. So I feel like, yeah, he was a bit of a deep cut. There were a lot of people who just assumed Romeo was some random human during the X-Men Hellfire Gala 2023 one-shot until it was actually brought up that he was in fact an Inhuman. Now, his Inhuman power is that he's an empath, and he does something very weird with his ability that I wasn't even aware he was capable of doing. Romeo has the ability to sense and manipulate the emotions of other people. This ability is of paramount importance in this issue because, for one, it's how he's able to help Iceman figure out where he's needed the most. Because now that in the wake of the fall of X, the fall of Krakoa, Iceman is back to doing regular superhero duty, and he's trying to go where he's needed the most, and Romeo is able to tell him exactly where people are in distress, where people are freaking out because they're being attacked or harassed in some way by Orcas. He knows where the problems are, and that is something that is incredibly helpful to Iceman because while he is an Omega level mutant, that doesn't make him omniscient. He doesn't know everything. So yeah, he's got the power, but just like any powerful weapon, he needs to know where to be pointed. That said, how the heck is Iceman back? Well, Romeo is the reason why. Apparently, Romeo used some facet of his empathy powers, and while I don't get the science behind it, I don't think we've ever seen Romeo do anything quite like this before. This is something that's brand new to the character. Romeo was able to use his powers to effectively sense the despair and hurt and fear that Iceman was feeling in that moment of his death, but he was also able to sense the feelings of love and care that Iceman had for Romeo. Romeo was able to latch onto those feelings and then manipulate those feelings back into a solid form, or at the very least give Iceman some kind of an anchor as a way to keep him around. The truth of the matter is Iceman is not quotey fingers back. I mean, yeah, he's still alive, don't get me wrong, but not in the way that is permanent. This isn't a permanent resurrection in the way that the 5 would resurrect a mutant on Krakoa. This isn't a normal mutant resurrection. This is basically Iceman on borrowed time. The way I kind of like to think about it is Iceman is constantly melting. He can barely hold himself together. Now, granted, he has a whole fortress of solitude now, something that is affectionately referred to as the southern pole of inaccessibility, but you get the idea. It's very much like a fortress of solitude that you would see in DC Comics for Superman. But this is the place where Iceman is at his strongest. It's a place that is comprised of pretty much himself. It's a place that he created. It's a culmination of his power and everything that he was capable of doing during this House of X era. The the more that Bobby Drake, aka Iceman, has been embracing his Omega level powers, this is the epicenter of that. So it's here where he's at his strongest, and it's also his proximity to Romeo that allows him to hold himself together. We see throughout the course of this issue that he's able to go out into the world and do his superhero shenanigans. However, he can't do it forever. Eventually, he will start to fall apart. And we even see this when he comes back from an earlier encounter with Orcas, and we see that he's barely able to keep himself together. He's falling apart at the seams until he gets back inside the South Pole of inaccessibility. And not only does Iceman need to stay close to his anchor, he also needs you to Hulk smash that like button. And also click that subscribe button if you want to see more videos doing breakdown and analysis on X-Men comics, as well as other comics that I check out. Make sure you tap that notification bell so that way you don't miss out on anything. But back to Iceman. Now, the question you may be asking yourself, well, okay, yeah, sure, Romeo and Iceman, they're romantically linked now. Apparently, Christian Frost is off the table. Somewhere in and around the Marvel Voices Iceman Infinity comic, Christian Frost and Iceman had split up, and somewhere in the middle of all that, Romeo and Iceman had gotten back together. So if you're wondering why Romeo's hanging around all of a sudden, that is why. But that's not the only reason Romeo is there. Yes, of course, he loves Bobby Drake. So yeah, he's gonna be there for his man. And yes, he is going to try to do the best he can to keep him alive, regardless of how reckless Iceman wants to be. But the truth of the matter is, it's not just love that's the reason why Romeo's doing what he's doing. He's also doing this and helping Iceman stay alive and fight the good fight against Orcas, because there's something that Romeo says in this issue that's very reminiscent of a famous poem written by Pastor Martin Niemöller. It's a poem that I always bring up or mention in some way, shape, form, or fashion when people ask me why I support the rights of LGBTQIA+ people or people from other marginalized communities. Now, I'm not gonna recite the whole thing, but one of the latter parts of that poem is that then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. It all boils down to do unto others as you would have them do unto yourself. So that is why Romeo is doing this, because he recognizes if Orcas is going this hard in the paint after mutants, who's next? When they're done with mutant kind, they're gonna turn towards the Inhumans. And while the Inhumans aren't the huge, overarching, widespread community that the mutants are in the Marvel Comics universe right now, that would actually make the prospect of Orcas turning their attention towards the Inhumans that much more frightening. So while yes, Romeo is doing this because he wants to, he's also doing this because he knows deep down he needs to help the X-Men. The X-Men are starting to find more allies, slowly but surely, among the Inhumans, with Romeo now being among their ranks, as well as the character Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel, who has recently been revealed to be a mutant the entire time. But also, still an Inhuman, a bridge between both worlds, and hopefully, only good can come out of this. That said, there are a couple of things from the X-Men's past that are coming back to haunt them in this issue. One of those things being Nanotech Sentinels, something that was first introduced during Grant Morrison's new X-Men series. The Nanotech Sentinels, while they didn't appear in a lot of comics over the course of their tenure in the Marvel Comics universe, they were quite deadly. They have been an artificially intelligent disease. They've also been a way to convert humans into Sentinels, and even later being upgraded from that to also turning humans into even more efficient deadly Sentinels. Now, in this particular instance, the Nanotech Sentinels aren't directly attacking humans. They're actually attacking human technology, going after cell phones, laptops, any type of tech whatsoever, and converting that into a mutant hunting sentinel. Now, what makes it scary is that they're going after normal humans. They're not just going after mutants. These nanotech sentinels are able to detect the X gene no differently than any other sentinel, but they're also detecting anyone who's been using a drug by the name of Experience. Now, some of you may be familiar with this if you were reading the Matt Fraction and Greg Land run on Uncanny X-Men, roughly around the time of Uncanny X-Men number 530 up to 534. There was a drug out there called Experience that would temporarily give humans mutant powers. Now, once the drug wore off, the human in question would just turn back into a normal human. They would only have an X gene for so long as experience was in their bloodstream. Not only would this drug make you a mutant temporarily, but it would give you the powers of some very specific people. And it's even casually mentioned that it was used as a form of super Viagra for a lot of people. But this just once again reaffirms my beliefs in what Orcas is up to. I have said this on multiple occasions that ever since Jonathan Hickman's Inferno, while Omega Sentinel and Nimrod have been playing very coy about what it is they're really in this for, why they're working with Orcas is not to just get rid of mutants to protect humanity. Nimrod and Omega Sentinel don't give a flying about humanity. They only care about machine supremacy. And if you have read any bit of House of X and Powers of 10, it is painfully obvious that that is the case. Orcas is trying to remove any and every single potential protector of humanity off the table so that they can convert humanity into machines, likely working in tandem with the Phalanx. The trickster Titan that sent Omega Sentinel from her timeline to this current one was very obviously a Phalanx, so it makes that much more sense as to why they're doing what they're doing. They're just trying to set the table for the Phalanx. Get rid of the mutants first, then go after the Avengers, the Fantastic Four, and everyone else for that matter. But right now, they're not ready to unleash all their forces on just one particular mutant. That is the reason why they're actually introducing, or rather reintroducing, the elements of doom. Literally a gang of villains themed after elements from the periodic table. And the chief one that's mentioned in this issue is Helium, and they're sending Helium and the rest of the elements of doom after Iceman's mom, which is kind of messed up considering everything that's happened to Iceman and his family as of late. As we know, Iceman's father had recently passed away. I believe he had cancer of some sort or variety, but instead of taking the Krakoan drugs that Iceman had offered him, he refused, and thus he died in Marvel Voices Iceman #2, which is no major surprise. Iceman's father has never been terribly accepting of him being a superhero. Now, you could make the case that his father isn't terribly crazy about mutants, but over the course of Iceman's publication history, it's been made fairly obvious that it's not so much that his parents don't like that he's a mutant. Yeah, they're not crazy about it, but they don't hate him because he's a mutant. In fact, his father even stood up to Sabretooth's son, Graydon Creed, back when Graydon was trying to run for president, and Mr. Drake actually called out Graydon for being a bigot. Now, I will definitely say Iceman's parents have had some wishy-washy representation as to how they feel about mutants over the years, but it's really just more the aspect of being a superhero that they don't like. They see it as dangerous work for their son. The issue that William Drake, Iceman's father, has with Iceman as a whole is that he's gay. That was actually the moment that broke the Drake family. There was even a whole story arc in some recent Iceman comics from around 2017, 2018, when the time-displaced X-Men were there and there was a younger version of Bobby Drake present. Iceman's parents thought that they had a chance at a do-over to raise a younger Bobby Drake who had, quotey fingers, yet to come out as gay, raise him to be heterosexual, and therefore they could have the heterosexual son that they always wanted. But that is neither here nor there. Iceman's mother, Madeline, is still very much alive, or at least for however long she can be protected from the elements of doom by her estranged son. So the idea that Orcas is going after his parents is going to be a sore spot for him. So of course he's going to throw himself into the fray. They're hoping that he gets very emotional about the situation so that they can manipulate that and turn it against him. This whole plan is actually being thrown out by one of the more recent additions to Orcas, Woodrow Pequod. And initially I thought, oh wow, they gave Judas Traveler a glow up. It's actually not the case. This guy works under Judas Traveler, so there you have it. It seems like this guy is vaguely competent, and at least competent enough to put Iceman up against a villain like Helium that would be very difficult for Iceman to take down. I say that because of all the elements on the periodic table, Helium is the one with the absolute lowest freezing point, which is minus 458 degrees Fahrenheit, or for my people across the pond or anywhere else in the world, minus 272 degrees Celsius. Helium is also the only element on the periodic table is cooled or frozen. It doesn't just freeze, it only becomes denser. And instead of being a gas, it becomes a liquid. So the reasoning why helium is considered to be a major threat to Iceman is because his powers ultimately won't really do anything to hinder him. That said, that's everything I really wanted to talk about with Astonishing Iceman #1. This book is off to a fantastic start. I'm really enjoying it so far. I really like Steve Orlando as a writer because by and large, Steve Orlando almost always hits it out of the park, at least on some degree or another. And even when he doesn't completely bang the whole ball out of the park, he at least hits a home run or inserts some other random positive sports analogy. If you enjoyed this video, do the YouTube thing, like, share, comment, subscribe, and make sure you tap that notification bell because I post multiple videos throughout the week, plus live stream every Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, 10 a.m. Pacific. So tap that notification bell so you don't miss any of it. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video, and until next time, let me know what you thought about Astonishing Iceman #1. Keep it plus ultra and sound off in the comments.